The Grotesque Guardians are the first bosses I ever attempted in RuneScape. I was just a young lad and these two stone boys seemed like the perfect challenge to tackle because I had just hit level 75 Slayer. Despite my combat stats not being very high, I found myself able to complete the task with relative ease, and I felt a great sense of accomplishment after it was over. I've come to the conclusion that this boss is a great way to learn some default boss mechanics, and also learn some advanced PvM mechanics. My account might not be low combat anymore, but my perspective on the Guardians hasn't changed since then. In this guide, I'll go over everything you need to know about killing the Grotesque Guardians. If you do end up finding this guide helpful, there'll be a link down below to all of my other boss guides to check out. However, I do believe it's time to strap in and start throwing some big hammers at some big gargoyles. Before we start, I want to mention that you have to be on a Slayer task to fight the Guardians. Also, if you should die in the encounter, then your gear will be saved in a chest outside of the instance. You can later retrieve the gear inside for 50k. Despite the fact that you're fighting two Guardians at once, your recommended combat stats aren't very high at all. I would recommend these stats if you wanted to try this boss out for yourself. The wiki does state that you could be as low as 70 for your melee stats, but at 75 you should definitely be alright. If you can afford Rigor, then 74 Prayer would also be a huge upgrade for the fight. The only hard level you absolutely need is 75 Slayer for the Gargoyles. I also wanted to talk about 3 Slayer perks you can purchase. Gargoyle Smasher is highly recommended so you don't have to manually finish off each Guardian, but I will touch more on that later. Get Smashed is nice for task extension since Gargoyles in general are a good task to have. And lastly we have Double Trouble. This perk can be good to speed up your Guardian task if you don't want a boss task that's too long. But on the flip side, you get half as many kills, so it slows down pet and gear hunting. I personally didn't purchase this perk, but it will vary by each person's goal. On top of that, you'll need to unlock the gates at the top of the Slayer Tower to even have the option to fight the Guardians. To open the gates, you must obtain a brittle key. The key is a 1 in 150 drop from killing gargoyles while on a Slayer task. Actually getting to the Guardians on the roof isn't too bad. The Slayer Ring is going to put you right at the base of the Slayer Tower. Beyond that, there is a fairy ring that's pretty close by, or you could take a house portal to Kirill and then run over from Canifis. When fighting the Guardians, you need both melee and range gear. The amount of gear switches you bring can vary from person to person, but a 4 or 5-way switch is pretty standard. In some of my footage you'll see me do an 8-way switch. Do your best to ignore that because I bought a new mouse and I just wanted to practice with it. For clarity, this is my recommended setup for first timers, along with budget options if you don't have everything available. I chose gear that's more defense oriented for the recommended setup. If you're a higher level, then you can definitely choose some more offensive items. You might also be wondering about what spec weapon to bring. If you're a higher level account, and you can afford them, Dragon Claws are the best option. Most people consider the blowpipe to be the next best option because of the sustain it provides. There are a lot of substitution options for gear, so I'm also going to leave a link to the wiki strategy page below to check out for yourself if you wanted. And as always, feel free to ask me any questions you might have about gear choices. Our inventory setup can also vary a little bit depending on your level. Most of it is pretty straightforward, so I'll leave a quick sheet on screen to take a look at. I only have a few things I want to mention. You could take Sarah Brews instead of regular food. I just prefer regular food for this boss. You will absolutely need to bring thrown rock hammers, or regular rock hammer, to finish off the gargoyles when they're at low health. Also, I picked super restores over prayer potions because the Guardians have a chance to drop Saradomin brews for loot. You'll be able to use them to extend trips as long as you have super restores in your inventory. The time has now come for us to begin the fight. Let me walk you through a full encounter and tell you what to look out for. I typically begin at the Canifis Bank and pre-eat an anglerfish to boost my health, and sip a stamina potion to help me get there. Once at the top of the Slayer Tower, I'll drop some of my food to make room in my inventory. The area is instant, so it'll stay on the ground the entire time. And on a side note, be sure to not go AFK on the roof, because you can get kicked off and lose everything that's on the ground. I also set my quick prayers to protect from range, rigor, and preserve. To begin the fight, you can ring the bell for a nice cutscene. After the first time you watch it, you can right click the bell for a quick start to the encounter. Both of the guardians will spring to life after the bell is rung. I turn on my quick prayers immediately and run over to the east wall. Dawn, the flying gargoyle, attacks with range, and Dusk, the gargoyle on the ground, hits with melee. This is phase 1 of the encounter. During this phase, you'll be attacking the flying gargoyle with range. Since you'll be getting hit by both gargoyles, you'll need to switch your prayers back and forth between melee and range. As long as you're standing on the east wall, Dusk will attack you one tick before Dawn. So you'll pray melee right before Dusk reaches you, and then pray range right after to protect from Dawn's range attack. The process is a simple back and forth prayer change, but alternatively you can walk under Dusk and he usually gets stuck trying to hit you, so you only have to worry about praying range. Also, during this phase and phase 3, Dawn can shoot out a larger purplish white orb in your general direction. If it lands within 1 square of you, it'll deal some damage and freeze you for a few seconds. I typically just ignore it, and most of the time it won't hit you. Once Dawn reaches 55% health, phase 2 will begin. During phase 2, Dawn will fly away and you just have to fight Dusk. You want to switch into your melee gear, keep Protect from melee on, and sip your super combat potion. Also, shortly after the phase starts, Dusk is going to charge up for an explosive attack. All you have to do is stand away from him for a few seconds to avoid being hit, and then go back to attacking him. Rocks will also periodically fall from the sky. You need to run away 2 squares from their impact point or you'll take some damage and be stunned for a while. Also, you don't want to walk under Dusk this phase because he can trample you for a lot of damage. Once Dusk reaches 55% health, phase 3 will begin. At the start of phase 3, both guardians will be in the air and start shooting lightning down randomly. You'll want to move 2 squares away from these points because they can deal rapid damage over time. While you're avoiding the lightning, you want to hover around the east side of the map and switch back to your range gear. We will be attacking Dawn this phase, but we'll be getting hit by both Dusk and Dawn, just like in phase 1. Dawn also gains a new ability you have to deal with. Soon after the lightning is over, Dawn will throw 3 purple orbs over the ground. They will grow in size over time and heal Dawn for 90 health per orb if they reach their full size. You'll have to run around and click on them to absorb them and prevent that from happening. The bigger the orb is when you absorb it, the more damage it's going to deal to you, so you want to pick them up fast. Phase 3 is probably when you'll be taking the most damage in the fight since you'll be running around and trying to keep your protection prayers up correctly. Remember, in this phase you can walk under Dusk to try and prevent him from hitting you. The timing for your prayer switches will be different depending on where you had to run as well. It's also possible for both guardians to hit you on the same tick, preventing prayer protections from one attack. Be sure to walk under Dusk if this happens to try and change their attack timings. You can also use blowpipe specs this phase to gain some health back. Once Dawn is killed, phase 4 will begin. As phase 4 starts, you want to switch into your melee gear again. Dusk will become empowered and will start off with a new ability. He's going to knock you back and surround you with fire. Thankfully, one of those squares will still be open. All you have to do is click anywhere on the outside of the ring to avoid taking damage. The only time you cannot do this is when the ring and the open square are pressed against the wall. Be sure to click directly on the open square to avoid taking massive damage. Beyond that, Dusk will randomly attack with either range or melee. You always want to pray against whatever his last attack was. He is always more likely to continue using the same attack. This is also when you want to use your spec energy if you brought a melee spec weapon instead of the blowpipe. You can also get stomped by him again, so try not to run under him. I know it sounds like a lot is going on in this fight, but each phase usually lasts less than a minute. Once you give it a go, you'll see it's not as involved or as scary as it sounds. The one advanced level tip I can give you is that if your range is a high level, like 90 plus, it's actually better to burst down Dawn in phase 3 and ignore the purple orbs. This does not work 100% of the time, but it will save time and supplies in the long run. I'm going to leave 2 unlisted videos linked below for you guys. One will be a full beginner's run, and one will be a full advanced run, if you guys want to look at either of them. However, the advanced run mostly consists of prayer flicking. This goes without saying, but anytime you can shut off your prayers is a huge help to supplies. Even if a prayer isn't perfectly flicked, you should give it a try because it helps a lot and it's good practice for harder bosses. I thought I would throw in a screenshot of the loot from my task. Guardians aren't top tier gold per hour, but they aren't the worst either, especially for a mid-level character. Other than that, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for the traction the last video is receiving, and I'll see you in the next one.